Good morning, church. There's a game that Katie and I really like to play called Stuff Happens. The whole premise of this game is you get a bunch of cards, you start with 3 of them, and you go around and take turns, and the whole goal is to get up to 10 cards in order of the severity of the things that happen, the stuff that happens. And it's all scaled on this thing called a misery index. Now, we have a version of Stuff Happens that's the parenting edition. And I want to share with you some of these things. The possible score is up to 100. And so at the 4.1, which is on the lower end of the scale, is toddler spits in face. So they say that would be a 4.1. Now coming up next at 14.6, it says that dog actually eats your kid's homework. So they say on a misery index, that's a 14.6, a little bit worse than toddler spitting food in your face. Now, to jump it up a little bit, we're going to get to 57.1, and that's installing a car seat. Now, I will personally attest to that being quite miserable, as we tried to actually turn around Logan's car seat, and it was just a nightmare. In fact, the car seat attacked me, and I actually noticed that I was bleeding everywhere. I'm fine, I'm not hurt too bad, but I can attest to the fact that that's about right, 57.1. And I'm going to jump up a little bit further, and this will be our last card we look at. On the misery index is an 80.6, and that's family vacation luggage has been lost. Some of you have been there, and you know how that can kind of ruin a vacation, a time where you're trying to get away, to get some rest, to find some comfort. And it ends up just being an anxious mess. And you know, I think that we as people don't like to go through things that are miserable, things that are uncomfortable. We typically chase towards comfort, and feeling like we have everything that we want and our needs met. We typically work to stay away from these uncomfortable moments and things that would just, be miserable, that we would label as being on some sort of misery index. You know, that's why I think we strive after, or we are very appreciative of the Declaration of Independence, where it talks about how that everyone has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We know that phrase very well. And while this is a very good phrase and something that I think we should appreciate and respect, especially when it comes to governmental power, I think it's wise for them to treat their people in that way. I think it's wise for us to treat people in that way. I think we might be chasing, though, after something that's not necessarily inherently true to the gospel. You see, I think in our desire to run away from things that are uncomfortable, we have traded the truth of the gospel and following Jesus and getting the joy and peace that only He can offer and bring to us, with trying to attain those things ourselves via maybe the American dream or this certain way of life where we're trying to pursue after happiness, we're trying to pursue after a life for ourselves, we're trying to pursue after this liberty, this freedom that we want. And again, not that these things are bad or wrong, but I think we are pursuing maybe after things that aren't of God at time, or the things that God has for us. And we instead are trying to pursue after the things that we want. You see, Paul would actually tell Timothy, this young man that he was trying to disciple and bring up into the gospel of Jesus, he would tell him that anyone who desires to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. It's not going to always be comfortable. You see, even though Jesus promises this joy and this peace, that doesn't mean that in the midst of that joy and peace that there will be hard times. You see, Paul himself actually went through quite a lot. I mean, he talks about the fact that he was shipwrecked multiple times, he was beaten, he was whipped, he was stoned one time, thrown out of the city. They thought he was dead, and he gets back up, dusts himself off, and walks back in. And then one of my favorites, he was bitten by a poisonous snake, and all the people around him, this is why he was shipwrecked, are thinking he's a dead man. But after the snake bites him, he basically just looks down like it was nothing, grabs the snake, and throws it. I mean, this man went through a lot. But as much as he went through, he could still say this. In Romans chapter 8, starting in verse 18, he says this: I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated, will be freed from its bondage to decay, and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. I think at times we are trying to chase after fulfilling our own wants and our own desires, this own sort of freedom, this own sort of life. And we do this with such vigor that at the end of the day, I think we find ourselves feeling more anxious, more frustrated, and a little more empty. Yet we read about this joy and this peace that God has for us. Church, today let's seek after the joy and peace that God has for us, not the comfort that we so longingly want, not the life that we would desire, and not the freedoms necessary that we want for ourselves. But let's seek after the life that is ours in Christ Jesus, that is made after the image of His Son, where we are being transformed and renewed daily more into the person that God desires for us to be. Let's seek after the freedom that God has for us, that is freedom from a bondage of decay that comes from sin, that is only going to do nothing but produce more anxiety and frustration within our lives. And let's seek after that kind of life and liberty in Him. And let's seek after His joy. See, because happiness lasts for a moment, but the joy of the Lord will spring up in us and last forever. No matter what happens, no matter what uncomfortable situations come our way, we can have joy knowing that no matter what happens here, it's not even worth comparing to the glory that's going to be revealed to us one of these days. So church, let's seek after Him. In the midst of suffering, let's have our joy and peace in the King. And let's live for the kingdom of Christ only. And let's serve God with all we have. I love you, church. Hope you have a blessed day. Talk to you later. Bye.